So my name is Gary Hockin, and I work for Rove. We're a web development company based in the US. If you listen to the Dev Hell podcast, you may have heard Ed Finkler mercilessly mocking us as we sponsor that. Yeah, I work for Rove. I'm a PHP developer for 15 years. You don't need to know any more about me. Oh, yeah, I forgot. That's a picture of me dressed as Elvis for no apparent reason. So we're here today. We're going to talk about OWASP. It's the Open Web Application Security Project, and it's like an open source organization for web application vulnerabilities. So, quick show of hands, who here has heard of OWASP before this talk? Superb. I can't really see you guys at the back, so I'm just going to guess, but yeah, that was a good show of hands. There's still a few people who haven't heard of OWASP. So for the people who have heard of OWASP and have looked at the vulnerabilities, this should be a really good refresher for you guys. It's going to be very brief, very basic, run through the current top 10. OWASP periodically release a top 10 list of vulnerabilities. The last one was from 2013, and they take vulnerabilities that they find in the wild, in real applications, not just PHP applications. You know, they take all applications that are running on websites, and they collate the data into what they think are the 10 most prevalent and severe. So these things are rated not only on how often they're found in the wild, but also how severe they are. And there's a combination of both that puts them into this top 10 order. So we've got 10 things to get through in an hour, so I guess we should get started. Number 10 is unvalidated redirects and forwards. And there are a couple of moments in this where the name of the vulnerability is like not immediately obvious about what that's talking about. There's a couple of moments where you think, well, what does that actually really mean? So the whole point of going through this is hopefully everybody can understand all of the vulnerabilities, how they happen, why they happen, and how to counter them. Apologize. So the website we're going to look at today, which has tremendous amounts of vulnerabilities, is Renholm Industries website. Has everyone heard of Renholm Industries? Show of hands, anyone? Excellent. So at least some of you will understand the humor in this slide deck now. If you haven't, it's from the IT Crowd on Channel 4, the comedy on Channel 4. So we're going to look at the Renholm Industries website, and we're going to look at how the vulnerabilities would affect a kind of pseudo-real-world website. So we're looking at unvalidated redirects and forwards. Now, many of us will have seen a page like this in the wild on the internet. You know, it's literally just saying, oh, I want to look at a news post, and the item ID of that news post is 3004. And at the bottom, you can see it says log in to comment. If I want to comment on this post, I need to be logged into the website for obvious reasons. But because I can log into this website from multiple places, typically what you'll do is you'll log into the website, and then you'll be taken back to where you came from in order for you to quickly and easily comment. You know, it's a kind of standard thing, right? You don't want to have to go back to the home page and navigate right back to where you were in order to do the validated action. But the pertinent piece of information here is in how the login form handles that redirect back to where you came. If you look here, you can see that there's a redirect parameter in the login form to say, log me in, and when I've actually successfully logged in, send me back to this page, please. And this is where the problem is. Because in this instance, we have the full URL of the page that we need to get redirected to once we've successfully logged in. Now, yeah, sending out an email to an entire team of people who works in an organization is fairly trivial, right? You can try numerous combinations, team at, staff at, users at, and you can get an email out to everybody in an organization. And in this instance, we say, oh, please click on this link to go to our corporate website to see some new amazing content. But if we look at how that link is formatted, you can see that it's taken us to the login page, but with a redirect outside of the domain. So we're actually going to log in successfully and be redirected to a URL outside of our organization. So now we log in and we go, oh, my username and password has failed. I must have mistyped the password, or I must have, put a space in there, or had caps lock on. So then you log in again. But the observant people will notice that you're not logging into the Renholm Industries website anymore. you're logging into the naughtyclickjacker.com website, who are then having your credentials. But once you've actually logged in here, whether it's valid or not, they then redirect you back to the website. So the only way you know that you've been had would be, oh, I thought I'd put my correct password in, but I hadn't, so I had to log in again. And you get redirected back to a page that you wouldn't expect. But we can all see how huge a security flaw that can be. To redirect people anywhere from your website by having mechanisms where you have a parameter that says redirect can be dangerous in all sorts of ways, not just this. Thankfully, the solution is really, really easy, and that's to just whitelist the URLs that can be redirected to. Yeah, frameworks with routers make this like really trivial because you can just pass the root name that you want to redirect to in the URL instead of an actual URL in the query string. So things like frameworks make this really easy. If you're not even using a framework, just having an array of key value pairs, a name to URL, works as well. You can then pass the key and then look up the URL once you need to perform the redirect. So it's really, really easy thing to actually mitigate, but it is amazing. It's surprising how much you will see this in the wild. So we're going to try and do this after every section. Are there any questions on unvalidated redirects and forwards? Please?
Do you think automatically...
I can repeat if you want to.
Do you think appending the website domain name to the beginning of the URL you get in the parameter is a good way to deal with that?
The question is, do you think that so not passing the domain name, but appending that in the code? Yeah, I guess it would work. For me, I would always just say make a whitelist. I mean, I think that making a whitelist, you're opening yourself up to things that you're not thinking about at the time that you're doing it. Whereas with a whitelist, it's easy. These are the only URLs you can redirect to, and anything else, you just can't go there. It may be painful to do that, to create a whitelist of every URL in your website, but I think that's the only way that you can really guarantee the safety. As I say, if you're using a framework, it makes it really easy, because you already have routes defined for these URLs. So, any more questions? Just here.
If you're on a website and there's a timeout, and then you have to ask the user to log in again, you want to take them back to where they were on the website. So are you saying you should whitelist every page on your website?
Yes. Yeah. It's painful, I know. But yes, I am saying you should whitelist every page on your website. I mean, if you're using any kind of framework, to repeat the point, you already have a list of... if you're using a router, you already have a list of routes that kind of reflect the entry points into your website anyway. So you have that list defined that you can use as your whitelist anyway. Any more?
I'm not quite understand why is this dangerous. If you can trick someone to click a URL, they can just give you the malicious URL in the first place.
No, it's because you can read. So it's this is the point where it's dangerous, right? So I'm actually saying this is HTTP. It should be HTTPS, obviously. But this is the point where it's dangerous because you have your login form, and it looks like the right login form. The URL is correct. It's on the renome.co.uk domain. Even if this was HTTPS, it would validate. You'd have the padlock. You'd have the certificate saying this is the correct website.
But you see there after the equal sign, you see it's naughtyclickjacker.com. If you could just go to HTTP right now, naughtyclickjacker.com directly.
But if we pulled this up in Safari, you wouldn't see the query string parameters.
You usually don't see the parameters.
In some browsers now, modern browsers, mobile browsers, Safari, I think even Chrome is coming to the point where they literally would just show the domain name that you're on in the URL bar.
Okay, so that's why it's dangerous, because you don't see the parameters.
It's dangerous because you can move people, so attackers can move people from outside of your domain name to their own domain name with massive ease. That's why it's dangerous.
Okay.
Yeah? We haven't got time, sorry, Frank, but catch me at the end, because otherwise we'll run out of time. So the next vulnerability is number 9, using components with known vulnerabilities. So I'm hoping most of the people in the room will recognize this website now. Has anyone here not heard of Composer? Is anyone, I guess, anyone who hasn't got the guts to put their hand up, but yeah, it is 2015. We do have Composer now that helps us to pull in dependencies. You know, there's loads of amazing packages out there, Fly System in the front row here, amongst others. So we don't want to be reinventing the wheel. What we want to be doing is bringing in well-written packages from external sources. So yeah, Composer has been amazing, right? You should all, everybody in this room, when you see Geordie, should thank him profusely for putting the effort and the time in to help us get this problem solved. It's epic. Sorry, wrong slide. It's epic. It still has a small downside, which actually, when you think about it, is more than a small downside. It can be really, really bad sometimes, because what it's done is it's introduced a culture of grabbing code from everywhere without really thinking about what you're doing, because it's trivialized the job of bringing in code from external sources, and things like PSR2 has meant that we can auto-load things from all over the place, which means we have in a golden period of bringing in code from everywhere. It's kind of scary is that you need to make sure that you are up to date on every dependency that you have and up to date on any security vulnerabilities in any dependencies that you have. And that's where the scary point is. This is an example, Josh's Code Guy's Slim framework. This was a major vulnerability in the router of Slim, where it could eval some things that were coming in via the route, so really, really serious. I want to make a point that this was handled beautifully and perfectly at the time. It was fixed really quickly. It was, not made public until it was fixed. Everyone was encouraged to upgrade. This happened on May the 13th. I have the actual date that I applied this patch to my live production system, which was August the 20th, 2013. So May, June, July. I went 3 months with this on multiple busy production servers with this vulnerability because I wasn't keeping up to date with the dependencies of my project. But then you have to think that what Composer also does, it allows you to seamlessly install dependencies, it seamlessly install libraries, but it also allows those libraries to seamlessly install their dependencies, and those libraries to seamlessly, it's an ever-increasing list of things you could be pulling in. So you need to think about not just, I have these 4 libraries that I depend on. You need to understand that they may depend on libraries that will get pulled in too. And you need to keep up to date on this stuff. I should have added a slide that introduces Rove Security Advisor, which is a Composer package that actually blocks you from installing any packages that have known vulnerabilities. I'll tweet about it after this, so if you want a link to that. It's literally 1 line in your Composer, and it allows you to be fairly comfortable and confident with what you're pulling down. So any questions on known security vulnerabilities or unknown security vulnerabilities? Yeah, please. Oh, it's on.
Hiya. You mentioned about keeping your dependencies up to date in your dependencies. What would be your recommendation for versioning your dependencies in your Composer file? Would you use a major version, like a 1.star, or would you use a tilde, or how would you tackle that problem? I tend to use a tilde. I tend to lock myself onto the newest version of a major version of any package. So Zen Framework, tilde 2, the newest version of any subtree of 2, using Semver. I guess that's each to their own, to be honest. I tend to work in projects where I can pull down break-in changes from projects and fix them fairly easily because I'm in an environment where I can do that. Not everyone can. So, yeah, you need to find something that works for you, sadly. I can't give you a golden bullet there, but anything else? We do. Oh, quick, yeah.
By checking when you're installing, I guess you should also set up a cron job where you check every day if a new vulnerability is found, because vulnerability might be found after you install the package.
Yes. I don't know if a cron job is the answer. I'd need to sit down and think about that. But you should have any kind of mechanism you can to subscribe to things like secure PHP, Twitter feed, and newsletter will publicize when these things when these terrible security flaws are found. Yes, you need to have a process in place whereby you get access to this information as quickly as you can. Right, one quick one, because we are on time.
Yeah, that kind of covers what I was about to ask. In system.drupal, there's the update module that tells you when your modules come out of date when there's security updates. Is there anything for Composer that will tell you what you've got installed, what the latest one is, and
There's-
what's...
Yeah, sorry, I get your question. I'm just trying to get some pace because we're behind. But yes, there are resources out there. Sensio Labs have something which is what Rove Security Advisories package is based on. I don't know of anything. I don't know of anything that is like comprehensive and really up to date and fast paced. So somebody should probably start that project who's in this room. But we do need something like that. Yes, it's a unfortunately, some of these have really simple answers, and some of them don't. And this is one where you need to like make a change to the process and the way you think when you work. I don't blindly pull any dependencies into my project anymore without researching them, at least cursory, or depend on packages which have good reputations, like the League of Extraordinary Packages, or something along those lines, because at least you know that there's some QA in place in those packages. So number 8 is cross-site request forgery, CSRF. And yeah, we can do some horrible things on our websites because security-wise, because cookies get sent to every request you make to the domain that the cookie has been set on, regardless of where that request is being or originating from. So I hope everybody, if you don't have a rudimentary knowledge of cookies, you probably should try and at least get some basic knowledge on how cookies work in HTTP, because you really do need to know that knowledge to understand these vulnerabilities. So here's a great example of CSRF. We're logged in. The only thing you need to note here is that we're actually logged into our website. And because we're using sessions to mean that we don't have to log into every single page, we have a cookie set which has our session ID. Pretty typical PHP stuff. So let's say you really, really like sort of David Hasselhoff, like Kat does here. So let's say you're like a massive fan of the Hoff. Any massive fans of the Hoff in? Kat, yeah? You're on, yeah? Come on. You can admit it here. We're all friends. Oh, yeah, there's another one. Excellent. And let's say that like you really like the Hoff so much that you want to like download his hit single "Jump in My Car." A friend of mine has told me you can use these like torrent things apparently to like find things on the internet that are a bit shady. I don't know myself, but apparently you can do this. So you hit Google and you go "Jump in My Car" torrent, and then you see all these lists of things. And then my friend says that these are the kind of pages you go to if you click on these links in Google. And you're like, oh, what do I click? Download here. Whoa, I've got viruses on my computer. What's going on? Pop-ups. Oh. But the most pertinent piece of information here is this broken image. This broken image, which you wouldn't look twice at, is what is actually performing the CSRF attack on your website. So if we look at the URL, oh, yes, money. If you look at the URL that is linking to, I mean, this would be an absolute horrible joke of a security vulnerability, but I've simplified it greatly, obviously, just so that we can get through this. So we've got the payroll subdomain, and we've got a transfer route, and we have from Maurice Moss with 2 sort code, 2 account, and $1,000. And this request is what was being embedded in that page as an image. So as you guys all know, that would just be handled as any other HTTP request from your browser. It would just be a HTTP request to this URL. And if you have no protection in place, this will just serve the results page saying, oh, yes, you're logged in and you want to transfer some money using the payroll system, and you've given me valid parameters to do that. So I'm just going to give you the transfer successful page, which would return as a broken image because it's the wrong MIME type. Your browser can't show a HTML page as an image. So there's, this is a very, very simple example just to try and get the point across, but there are multiple places where real-world applications could be vulnerable to this kind of attack. There's some fairly easy and simple ways to mitigate this. Yeah, this is a rubbish solution, use post, because anyone can construct post requests in the same way as they can, a sophisticated or even simpleton attacker could use some JavaScript to post a form on the page. So using post will at least skim off a layer of script kiddies who then get bored with trying to work out how to solve that. Yeah, requiring user interaction. If you're doing something that's transferring money about, actually expecting a user to at least click a box or to enter their password again or to just do something to confirm that this is a real request and a real action obviously helps. We can use things like CSRF tokens, which are they're hashes that are put into hidden elements in a form, and then they're checked for the other end. So there's a hidden element in the form with just a hash, just a random hash, which we've stored in the session when we've generated the form. And then when we come to process the form, we can compare the session value to the posted values and say, oh yes, this has come from a form that was generated on our site because we know this token exists. Yeah, don't use sticky logins for anything that's like critical. You notice things like banks have really, really harsh timeout values on their logins. You know, you log in and you take a phone call, and when you put the phone down, you're already been logged out of your bank because they want to mitigate this as much as possible with really, really short timeouts on the sessions, on the login. Basically, if the user's not logged into your site, then you're not open to this vulnerability at all. As an aside, does anyone want to guess what this URL does? Can you see this at the back? I know there's some side monitors. I can't see. Any guesses? Just shout out. Don't need the microphone.
One-click checkout.
One-click checkout's a good guess. It's good, but it's not right. What was the other shout? Add to basket, absolutely. So this URL will put an item in your Amazon shopping cart. There are certain authors, none that I know at this conference, but there are certain technical authors when you go to their website to look at their book. Oh, that looks like an interesting book. And then the next time you go to Amazon, you're like, how the hell did that book that I looked at on their website get into my shopping cart? And it's because they're using something like this to actually put the item in your shopping cart when you visit their website. Now, Amazon are aware of this, and they call it a feature, not a bug. So, you know, it's all good. Yeah. I've actually checked out before with and received an unwanted item because I just one-click checked out, as Kieran said, and, oh, why have I got this book that I didn't order? So, yeah, be careful. If it's good enough for Amazon, though, it's good enough for you guys as well. So, you know, maybe, and maybe some of these can be wanted vulnerabilities. So, are there any questions on CSRF? Super duper, because we are running out of time. So, 7 and 4 I've lumped together. Excuse me. Dry mouth. Somebody kept me up till 2 a.m. Kieran. So 7 and 4 I've lumped together because for me they're two sides of the same coin, and because I'm running out of time, it's easier for me to cover two things in one. Missing function level access control and insecure direct object references. These are pretty easy for me to demonstrate, so we'll get through this fairly quickly. Yeah, I've just gone to delete news.php, and I've given a news ID of 147, and the system hasn't checked whether I'm allowed to delete that news item or who I am or where I come from or anything at all. It's just gone, yeah, okay, you can delete that news item. You know, pretty bad things, but they must be fairly prevalent for OWASP. I mean, let's remember that OWASP put insecure direct object references at number 4 in their list. So this stuff must be out there in the wild. Yeah, oops, when somebody's deleted all of your news posts and you know and there's no content on your website, and you're like, what the hell's happened? User consistent and unavoidable access control layer, yeah? It's fairly self-explanatory here. Make sure that you're checking every single request, that the person who's doing something should be allowed to do those things. So that was like direct function access. This is, I've even forgotten the name of it again myself, because it's missing function level access control was that one. This is insecure direct object reference. Excuse me. So this is me being able to access emails that I shouldn't be able to access. So this isn't a function where I'm actually doing something. This is just getting access to something I shouldn't really be allowed to see. So I've just put a random message ID into the ID parameter of the query string and found some email that I shouldn't be able to read. Again, oops, pretty self-explanatory, user-consistent and unavoidable access control layer. Secure all the things. Frameworks should make this fairly easy. If you're developing on frameworks, then there's multiple points that you can hook into the dispatch process to actually be able to do this fairly straightforward. Yeah, I'm standing right in front of the slide, sorry. It makes it fairly easy because you can do something on every request to check these things. Any questions on crazy, badly designed?
I see a lot of frameworks put access control basically on the routing layer as
Yeah.
default. And if you think about APIs and import and export, you actually always want to also put access control at a lower level.
Yes.
But in the end, you always have to do both of them.
So the question was
Is there a
about
better solution?
the question was about where should we put our access control. As far as I'm concerned, I don't really care as long as you're doing it, which is the short answer. To be honest, it's kind of out the scope of this talk, really. But yes, I tend to do it both at the router level and at the controller level when I work, because I work pretty much all of my time on Xen Framework 2. I tend to do it in two places. I don't think there's a problem with checking security things too much in an application. Yeah, we're doing it twice, brilliant. You've got 2 layers of oopses that you can avoid. So both, I would suggest, but it's to do with your own business needs. If you can't take the performance hit of checking things twice, some people can, some people can't. Yeah, horses for courses, I would say, which is a wriggling way of saying, I don't know. So sensitive data exposure, how are we doing for time? Cool. We're only up to number 6, and obviously they get more severe as we get going. So sensitive data exposure. The question here is, what about this checkout form makes it secure? Any guesses?
Is it the logos on the bottom?
Is it the beautiful gifts of padlocks that makes this form secure? No. Yeah, the answer obviously shouted out was nothing. Oh, and I just realized that I called the URL buy shit, so I apologize if I offended anyone. Yeah, probably should have changed that, but it's fine. Yeah. Not even a picture of Douglas Reynolds makes that form secure. Obviously, there's so many things wrong here. It's not loaded in HTTPS. Yeah, it ain't good. If you're not loading, so maybe that form was submitted to HTTPS. Maybe it was loaded over HTTP, but when we look at the actual form definition, it's submitting to HTTPS. So that's okay, right? Well, no, because if you're loading your form over HTTP, you're already too late, because the form can be compromised. JavaScript can be added that is actually changing the place that this data is being submitted to. Anything could happen. If your actual form is not being loaded over HTTPS, then all bets are off. Even if you have your form in an iframe that is, if you're from 1994 and you're loading your form up in an iframe, but the parent page is HTTP, you've lost again, because you can compromise the parent page. You can then descend down the DOM into the iframe and do whatever you want. If the page that the person is clicking on to check out is being loaded over HTTP, you've already lost. So basically the answer is, if you're doing anything like this, everything needs to be HTTPS. The whole subdomain or your whole process needs to be HTTPS. If you do need to store sensitive personal information, of which a password is personal information, people tend to use the same password on a billion websites, so you have a duty of care. Even if the passwords you're storing are, for fairly trivial pieces of data, they can only get something that you think, oh, it doesn't matter, I just store it in clear text, because nobody's going to want to get hold of my password list because there's nothing they can do with it. Well, they can. They can probably log into that person's email if they've used the same password in multiple places. So you have a duty of care to store a password as personal information, as the same way you would every other piece of personal information. So use password hash. It's built into PHP 5.5. Any takers? 5.5? Yeah? It's built into PHP 5.5. So if you're using PHP 5.5, you have this method. I should say function. You have this function. If you don't, there's a compatibility library on GitHub. Just look at, I think it's under ISC Maxell's account, so you'll easily find it. If you do password_hash compat library, you'll find it. Yeah, don't store sensitive data at all. There's some really good services now that will actually take care of this problem for you. There's good services which have APIs for logging users in and for handling the storage of, software as a service, for shopping carts, and for all of this stuff. And if you can get away with not storing this data at all, that's a win. That's a big win, because then you don't actually have to worry about this. And don't forget, if you do expose this personal data, if you get hacked and personal data is exposed, unless you're a huge company, that can be something that your company will never recover from. So, yeah, if you can get away from that and blame someone else if there's a problem, it's all good. I tend to think that if I'm going to store sensitive information, I would personally want to ask someone who's much smarter than me to help me, because I'm not an expert in this stuff. There are people out there who are experts. Anthony here is, like, his blog is the de facto read for me when I want to keep up to date on this kind of stuff. So yeah, hire an expert. If you are going to be storing credit card details, you need to be considering this stuff. Yeah, you're a developer, you're not a security expert. Maybe some of you are security experts, great, you know, you're okay, but most of us are developers. And do we really want to worry about this stuff? No. So, and that's not me saying come and hire Rove, because we don't really need that kind of business, but you should definitely look to hire people to help you out with this. Yeah, there's one really big piece of information that I think if you just take one thing away from this talk, it would be this line. Try not to store like naked pictures of yourselves on a cloud server you don't control. Especially if you're a celebrity, apparently. That's not a good thing to do either. So, are there any questions on sensitive data exposure? Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward one, really, right? Cool. Security misconfiguration, number 5. Some of these interlap quite nicely. As I just said, I'm not a ops guy. I'm not even a DevOps guy. So yeah, server misconfiguration would be something that I would definitely look to try and get someone to fix that stuff for me. Whether you have ops guys internally or whether you hire someone like the amazing sponsor of this conference, Engine Yard, to take care of platform as a service, to make sure this stuff is done for you. Again, it's good to get some professional help here. Hopefully, some people will be working in a place where you have ops departments who can take care of this stuff for you. 2 thumbs up to those guys. There's so many things, that you can get wrong, like just exposing information you don't want to, exposing PHP versions in headers or Nginx versions, keeping your software up to date, having things like your MySQL database exposed to the world, having default username and passwords that you haven't changed that allow someone to get in. There's just this billion things that you need to worry about that, yeah, somebody who does this for a living should be able to do this fairly easily and trivially, whereas for someone like me, I wouldn't know where to start. So, saying that, there are some security misconfigurations that are the problem of the developer. So this should be a fairly familiar screen to anyone who uses Framework 2. There's similar screens in Symfony, there's similar screens in Slim, in that artisanal framework, whatever that one is. Yeah, what's happened here is that in production, we've managed to generate an exception. In this instance, we've had an exception because I can't actually render the template that I should be in Framework 2. But it's this information here that's killing us. This whole stack trace of how our application is running is visible to any potential attacker. And it's giving out really cool information for them, like physically where the files are located on the file system. They can infer that this is a Unix-like system. They can infer lots of information that I wouldn't be smart enough to infer from that, but people who are looking to attack you will. This is like a gold mine for them. So we're developers, but the code is our problem. So we definitely need to make sure that things like full stack traces and exception handling in production masks as much information as we can. Any questions? Cool. So we get into the brunt of it now. Cross-site scripting, XSS. Anyone here has not heard of cross-site scripting? Someone must be brave enough, come on. No? Excellent, super duper. Yeah, cross-site scripting is kind of just the golden rule is escape all the user input all of the time. Never, ever, ever. No? No? You can?
Escape all data all the time.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. It's a very valid point, and I do cover that in a few slides' time. But yes, I'm using a simplified version here. Yes, escape all data that's input into your app from whatever source, not just users. Any data that's coming into your app, escape it when you output it. This is talking about when you're actually putting things into the HTML to be rendered in the browser. So really, really simple. This is literally the hello world of cross-site scripting. So we've got a search box, and we add some funky JavaScript in there. And then we've managed to put a pop-up box on top of the website. Look at it, woohoo! You know, we've put the script tag in, and the alert has happened, and we can say we are definitely elite hackers. Woohoo! This is an actual photograph that the Daily Mail ran on their website when they were talking about something being hacked. So this is what all hackers look like. Every hacker I've ever seen has always worn a tie and a balaclava. So, yeah, it's all good, right? You know, it seems so trivial. All we've managed to do is, in our own browser, make an alert box pop up using JavaScript. You know, what's the harm of that, really? Well, what if we put this code into the search box? So what's going to happen now? Any guesses? Surely everyone can infer this, right? We're going to get a pop-up, an alert popped up onto the screen that's got cookie equals and a serialized string containing our cookie data. Again, what have we done here? We've actually managed to tinker with a website to make a pop-up appear on our own browser, not somebody, you know, this is literally just our own browser and we're tinkering, and we've managed to get some fairly sensitive information to appear on our own browser. Great. Well, what happens if we put this into the, oh, I don't know why there's an anchor around that, sorry. Oh yeah, cool. So what happens if we manage to put this on on a website that we control? So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to try and get someone to click through to a URL. I'll split that out because obviously it's really difficult to read when it's packed up. So we've got an anchor at the top, and we've got an anchor at the bottom, and we're just saying, click here if you want to see some videos of cats falling off tables, because that is well known in the industry to be like the best clickbait you can do, cats falling off tables in videos. So what have we done? Well, we've linked, the actual link goes to the search page on our Renault Industries website, and the search term is some JavaScript again. But what this is actually doing is, it's navigating us to mynastysite.com with a query string parameter of cookie equals and our string of serialized cookie data. So now, we're not just putting the sensitive cookie data on our own screen, it's actually going to a third-party domain. When we get there, we just say error, and they're like, oh, the cat's fallen off the table, it must be so popular that their website is down or something. I'll come back later and see some cats falling off the table. But yeah, because if you look in the URL, you can see that we've now hit this website with PHP session ID, blah, blah, blah. Our cookie data has been turned into a string, it is a string anyway, and sent to this third-party website. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't resist. Cliche! Yeah. So now we've got a third-party website that is actually able to capture capture the cookie data from an XSS vulnerability in their search form. The reason for that is because when we actually show the search results page, which here, what we're actually doing is, under that pop-up, which I probably should have shown you, is search results for, and then we're echoing back out the string that was put into the search box, and we're just echoing it out raw. We're not escaping it. So when that gets echoed into the HTML, it's actually unescaped JavaScript, which gets run by the browser. That's where the vulnerability lies here. We're actually allowing users to enter something into our system and putting it back onto the HTML, unescaped and unfiltered and unchecked. That's where the vulnerability is. Sorry, I like that picture. I wanted to see it again. It's all good. So yeah, you need to escape data that's coming into your application that you're actually displaying out when you're displaying it out onto the screen. So there's two kind of sides to this coin. Number one, we'll cover the other side of this coin, which is filtering the input when it comes in, but you still need to be escaping it when you're actually putting it onto your HTML, into your page. Whitelist allowable characters rather than trying to work out by blacklisting things is like difficult. Whitelisting's a lot easier. You could always miss something that when you're using a blacklist, that somebody can be really clever and craft using HTML entities and all this other stuff that actually gives you unexpected things. There's like tons of really good escaping libraries out there, but going back to like the composer equals bad slide, obviously don't pull them in blindly, but there are really good escaping libraries out there. So if I can remember the key to press, this is one of my favorite XSS attacks of all time. Does anyone know what key to press to get Keynote to play a video? No? Oh, we had it then. We don't have sound, do we? Sorry. So this is who.is, which is a who.is lookup service for domain names. And you should be able to see at the top of the screen there, this is actually playing the Harlem Shake on my laptop, which you can't hear. Does that help? No? So you can now see that this website is doing some funky dancing to the Harlem Shake. Oh, look, we've got Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up in the actual record as well. Yeah, pretty cool. This was live for like ages. And the reason that worked is because this clever guy, jamiehankins.co.uk, in his DNS records put some JavaScript. So when you went to who.is, DNS, jamiehankins.co.uk, they weren't escaping this because they weren't seeing this as user input. So what was happening was they were just showing this on the screen unchecked, and then people were going, oh, look, your website plays the Harlem Shake and dances for us. So, yeah. So this goes back to what Kat's point earlier. It's not just about like where you can think, yeah, this is a box where somebody can put some data. I need to make sure I escape that. I've actually managed to annoy a few friends of mine who ran a company that were running a Facebook game by putting some JavaScript into some of my Facebook data. And they were querying the Facebook API and pulling the data back to display on their site. And they weren't filtering it. Facebook were. It was fine. But when they were pulling directly from the API, they were just blasting it on the screen. It's coming from Facebook. It'll be fine. Yeah, it won't be fine. As Jamie Hankins has proven to us all, it's pretty cool if you can get, this was just a bit of fun, and this was fixed quickly, and, nobody was really hurt. They maybe had a bit of egg on their face, the DNS lookup companies who had this on their site, but yeah, you could do some pretty bad things with that. So, what were we talking about before I got sidetracked? Oh yeah, we were saying that we've managed to use XSS to, was there any questions on XSS before we move on? Excellent. Either I'm really scary to talk to or I'm explaining this stuff really well. So thank you. Yeah, we've managed to, so in the last XSS attack, we managed to redirect a user to a website and capture their PHP session ID. But what can we really do with that? Well, if you've got broken authentication and session management, that's where these session IDs that you can capture maliciously come into play. So some websites that are using PHP now still allow you to really do the most basic way of using this session ID that you've captured. Just pass it in as a query string. Yeah, it kind of reflects back to number 5, which is like in badly configured servers, because if your PHP configuration is letting you pass in PHP session IDs in the query string, that's probably not the best thing in the world you should be doing. You can turn that off. So say in PHP any session.useOnlyCookies. I think that this is turned off by default from 5.3 onwards. I think, don't quote me, but you should probably check that. That just gives, that doesn't, turning this off doesn't protect you. People can still spoof sessions using these cookies, but it gets rid of a whole layer of people that aren't professionals. They're just toying around. It just discourages that lot. How do we actually make sure that our session is secure? Well, this is one where there's not really a solid answer. This is one where you need to kind of design your system around the security of your session. You need to keep it as a first-class citizen in your mind and think, I need to make sure that my sessions are secure. Session regeneration is one of the ways you can do that. So regenerating the session ID every time that there's a change of, there's an elevation or reduction of the security level of your user. So if a user logs in, regenerate the session ID. If the user requests additional privileges somehow, if you have a system where you log in and you can get your normal privileges, but if you're an admin, you need to further elevate your privileges, regenerate your session ID then. If a user logs out, regenerate the session ID. So what we're trying to do is make sure that if these session IDs are captured, that they're not any use to people after as short a time as possible, basically. Yeah, does that make sense? I don't know if I explained that very well. So regenerating the session ID basically means that the session ID is, the old one that's been captured is no longer valid, and a new session ID is generated and sent with the next response in the cookie. So you can mean that those captured session IDs are actually no use to anyone after a period, a short period of time. Again, as we covered earlier, like password confirmation for important things, stop this from happening, because even though I've managed to actually capture a session ID and craft a request that makes me be logged in as you in the system, I don't know your password. So if I want to do something critical, I need your password to be able to do it, then actually your captured session isn't that valuable to me. There's like some libraries out there that will secure your sessions. I think these are fairly outdated, but they do exist. So you can do something like look at the IP address that started the session and store that in the session, and then compare that to every other IP address that requests that session. This was kind of, this kind of worked really well. You could create a hash from like the user agent and the IP address. So you could check that they were on the same browser and the same IP address so that you can't, the hijack session would be denied. With the advent of people on mobile devices more and more and more, where IP addresses change much more frequently now than they did in the past, it's not as elegant a solution as I would like, but it works to some extent. It gives you a bit of extra, layer of protection. There's some session handlers, libraries out there that will do this kind of thing for you. Zen Session does it. Symphony Component, HTTP Foundation Session does it. Aura.session does it well, which is a nice standalone library with very few dependencies, or no dependencies, I think. Some artisanal session handler probably does it if you're into that kind of thing. There's tons of libraries out there, so you don't need to code this yourself. And it's an added layer of protection, but for me, there's only one way to make sure that you pretty much covered all bases, which is HTTPS by default. There's a setting that says cookies should only be sent over HTTPS, so you can stop cookies being sent through unsafe HTTP requests. That's a PHP-only setting. There's a HTTP-only cookies, which actually means that cookies can only be sent over HTTP requests. CSRF, as we've already discussed, so a form field to check that the request is coming from the right place in the first place. Credential entry, so entering a password whenever you do anything that is particularly vulnerable, and then session regeneration. You need to take this as a package and pretty much implement as much of that as you feel is appropriate for the level of security that you need in your application. So are there any questions on session management? Superb. And we're looking okay for time too, So number one, no guesses no points for guessing this. Yeah, injection. Injection. Has anyone here been a victim of some kind of injection attack, like SQL injection, or is the most common we would see here? Yeah. Brave souls, put their hands up. I'll put my hand up. Yeah, absolutely. I'm betting there's some people in the room who haven't put their hands up, who have been susceptible to this attack, but probably don't know it yet. These are really, really easy mistakes to make. I made these mistakes tons of times, which is why I'm standing up here talking to you about it, because I've been compromised incredibly badly in the past by this kind of thing. Filter all the things all of the time. So this is the other end of the escape all your output. Every time you're output into the browser, escape everything. Every time you're bringing things into your application, filter it. So filter input, escape output is the mantra that you should be living by when you're working with, with these kind of things. So filter all the input all the time. So here's a really, really basic 101 intro into injection, which I'm hoping most people will know, but a refresher won't hurt. So we've got a news page which says, news, show me some news, and the news ID is 1409. Pretty simple stuff. But what happens when I craft a URL that says, load me the news page and bring me the news ID of drop table news? Little Bobby tables, right? Everyone knows little Bobby tables, surely. Yeah, this is how my code worked when I got compromised by an injection attack. I actually had access to the code, and I pulled in the actual code that I used at the time, and this is what I was doing. Select start from news, where ID equals ID, run the query. Yeah, fatal error, table news does not exist. What? How can table news not exist? Because obviously I've just run some SQL that has dropped my table news. It's a pretty basic example, but then how can this be used for compromising? Well, crafting URLs like this, username equals mmos and password equals 1, quote, space, or 1 equals 1. So that will get passed in as username equals mmos and password equals 1 or 1 equals 1. Well, 1 equals 1 is always true. So what that actually means is that we evaluate the query as this, if you were using my really bad code from my earlier example. And we end up getting logged in as the lowest numbered user in a table in most cases. Depending on your table setup, it could be slightly different, but in most default cases, in the vulnerability I had, it was the lowest numbered user that was being returned, because 1 equals 1 evaluates always as true. Therefore, it was pulling the whole record set. And my code was picking the first result from that record set and saying, oh, that's the user that's logged in. So now I'm logged in as the lowest user. Generally, the lowest user will be the developer who's developed the system, right? Because we always create our own accounts when we're testing. And generally, the developers will have maximum permissions, because we like to have the maximum permissions even when we've finished working in a system, for when those pesky people do something wrong and we have to fix it. So this is a vulnerability that effectively lets anyone log into your website as the lowest numbered user, which is why it's number 1 in the OWASP top 10. You really have to think about filtering every single piece of data that comes into your application all of the time. No exceptions, no excuses. There's some basic filtering built into PHP. So filter var username, filter sanitize email. This would pretty much solve that problem out of the box. It's built into PHP. It's there for us to use. The second point is to use parameterized queries. As of 5.4, MySQL underscore star query functions were deprecated. 5.4, anyone? Any takers? 5.4. So the actual way that I was running that SQL query is deprecated. As of PHP 7, it's going to be removed entirely. So you won't be able to basically run 5.5. Oh, OK, thank you. Yeah, apparently as of 5.5, it's been removed entirely. So we now use things like parameterized queries. So I'm using PDO here. And what I'm doing is saying, I want to have a token substitution to build my query rather than concatenate in a string. So that means even if I haven't filtered my input, which I have in the slide before, we're kind of mitigating this concatenating a string that's doing things that we don't expect. Anyone notice the security vulnerability in this slide? Come on, don't be shy. Nobody? No, yeah, please, shout. Yes, so we're accessing the password directly without filtering it. The password in get, yes. We're accessing it directly. We're not filtering the input here. We're taking it directly from get. But obviously, you should be hashing your passwords anyway. Not that I would say you shouldn't filter the passwords, but if you're hashing it, it gets rid of this anyway. Hashes are inherently secure to put into your database. Password hash, compat library, yeah, we've come around in a big circle again. So many of these things are dependent on each other that it kind of works it all out once you get into working in this way. There's some really cool filter libraries out there that can help you to do this, because obviously writing filters for data, there's so many common data designs that you want to use. You know, email addresses are going to be the same, postcodes in the UK. We can filter these things really rigidly because we know what character sets should be in a postcode. We know what character sets should be in a telephone number. So there's tons of filtering libraries that give you access to these patterns that mean you don't have to worry about writing a regular expression for a UK postcode because y'all all right. Nobody wants to be writing regular expressions when someone's solved that problem for you. So we've got things like Zen filter. Yes, I always put the Zen libraries first because I'm a Zen framework guy. Woo-hoo. Aura filter is really good for this. And there's some artisanal filtering library, I think, if that's your thing. There's some really cool filtering libraries out there that allow you to build filters programmatically using fluid interfaces, you know. Have a look around. There's tons of filtering libraries out there. Any questions on injection? No? Yep, shout, or do we have? What about mod security? I don't know what you mean, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, so Bill, so you're talking about, so the question is what about mod security, which apparently is an Apache module to kind of, it takes care of some of this stuff before it even hits your application, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, great. I haven't used it myself. Sorry, I can't really see it because of the light. I haven't really used it myself, but I'd be interested to learn if, you know, if it was me personally, I think that most of these problems you can handle at the code level because when you get into, I'm in a way of working personally where I escape all output by a macro course and filter all input. In fact, the way that I get input from my Zen framework applications is I don't use the default methods to get it. I've written my own methods that take Zen filters as a parameter. So I can only get data from post and get and from whatever else, put, whatever, by using a method that I filter it. So I don't think that I would need personally to have some layer before my application, because I think that if you get into a habit of coding defensively, you should be fine. But with that said, I would not have any problem with adding that as an extra layer on top. Yeah?
Okay, yeah, thanks.
I would be scared to put the security of my website in the hands of a module that I didn't fully understand. Would be my own personal worry, basically. So I would still be filtering anyway. Even though this was in place, I would still be like, oh, I'm going to filter anyway. So then it doesn't really solve any problems for me. But extra layers of security, always good.
Okay.
Any more questions? Shoot. Yes, it's a good question. And I probably should have had a slide on that because I can't for the life of me remember the name of it. There's a Google project called something weird, which I can't remember. In fact, I have it installed on my machine. I'll tweet about it after this. Yeah, shoot. Do you know the name? The question was, is there any automated way to test against these vulnerabilities? And Google do have like a pen testing tool that allows you to run this against your application, and it will spider your app and go down and look for easy vulnerabilities. So yes, but I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, sorry. I'll put out a tweet afterwards when I find it on my machine. Or just come up to me afterwards, because it's on my laptop, so I can find it. Do we have time for any more questions, Kieran? Yeah? Shoot.
OWASP 2013?
Yes.
OWASP 2013?
Yes.
It seems a bit out of date.
So the question is, this is from 2013, and it feels like it's out of date. OWASP can constantly monitor this stuff, but they only put out a new list when there's sufficient change in the vulnerabilities that they feel like they need to update their top 10. What this tells me is that these vulnerabilities haven't changed since 2013, right? They're still available in millions of websites and millions of web applications around the world. So, yes, it may seem like it's out of date, but that's only because they haven't felt the need to update this list, really. You can look on the OWASP website. There's like a float-in list. Some of these may have changed from the actual published versions, but there's nothing in the top 10. The orders may have changed, but they're the same vulnerabilities. Any more?
The piece of software is called Zap Attack Proxy.
Okay, there's one piece of software, Zap Attack Proxy. Thank you very much. That's the Google one. Oh, okay, I found a different one. Qualys is another piece of software. Thank you very much. Nikto. Nikto. There we go. I should really blog on these things and try them out, so I will. Thank you. I think we got time for one more, Kieran, or not? No? I'm sorry. We're out of time. Please, 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 please rate my talk and everyone else's talk on Joined In. We really, really, really like the feedback. And if you want to talk more about these things, there's beer later. Find me. I'm always like to talk about this stuff. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. We have a short break now with coffee and cakes available down in the King George if you want to head down there. And we'll be back here with Kieran talking about why your test suite sucks in 20 minutes.